The city of Lekora sparkled at night. Skyscrapers lined the skyline like stars trapped in glass. From the penthouse of Marina View Towers, Ethan Cole looked down at it all. The city he conquered, the empire he built, and yet he felt nothing. He had the money, the status, the admiration of everyone in Crown Link Industries, yet inside he was a hollow man. His nights were filled with laughter that wasn't his, and faces he didn't remember. Each dawn he woke beside strangers who didn't even know his middle name. He had mastered business, but not peace. His friends often teased him. "Ethan, you could marry any woman you want." He would smile faintly and reply, "I don't want any woman, I want something real." But in Lekora City, real had become a fairy tale. Relationships were transactions, trust was currency, and Ethan, though powerful, had lost both. One night, as rain fell softly on the city's glimmering streets, he sat in his car, engine running, music low. He watched people hurry past in their soaked clothes, workers, lovers, strangers, and wondered if anyone truly lived honestly anymore. He remembered his mother's last words before she died. "Son, never let success make you forget your soul." But perhaps he already had. He often drove through Cedarlight District, the quieter part of Lekora, just to feel human again. The noise of the rich had begun to suffocate him. That night, he stopped at the roadside and stared at the flickering streetlights. He didn't know that just a few kilometers away, in a tiny room in Cedarlight Village, a desperate young woman was crying. Her name was Amara Bennett, and her choice that night would change both their lives forever. Ethan sighed and rested his head against the steering wheel. "What's missing?" he whispered. He didn't know that the answer was already walking toward him, barefoot on the red soil of sacrifice. Because destiny doesn't always come in golden packages. It sometimes comes wearing borrowed clothes, trembling under city lights, carrying a heart too pure for the world that's about to break it. In the quiet heart of Cedarlight Village, life was painted in shades of struggle and grace. A small wooden house stood at the edge of the dusty road, its roof patched with rusted zinc, its walls humming with prayers and whispered dreams. Inside lived 3 orphaned sisters, Clara, Sophie, and Amara Bennett. Clara, the eldest twin, worked as a clerk at the Lekora Records office. Her face carried both beauty and bitterness, the look of a woman who had tasted disappointment too early. Beside her, Sophie, her twin, lay weakly on a thin hospital bed in their small living room, her breath shallow, her heart failing her slowly, and Amara, the youngest, moved like sunlight through their shadows, her every action touched with quiet strength. Each morning, Amara would bathe Sophie, feed her soft pap, and whisper, "You'll get better, I promise. God will make a way." But the hospital bill said otherwise. $2 million was needed for surgery at St. Flora Memorial Hospital, and they barely earned enough for food. That evening, the doctor called Clara aside. "Miss Bennett, your sister's condition is worsening. We can't continue treatment without a deposit." Clara's throat tightened. I'll find the money," she muttered, though she had no plan. But when they got home, and Amara asked what the doctor said, Clara turned away, pretending nothing was urgent. "Maybe you can ask your office for a loan," Amara suggested softly. Clara's eyes flashed. "A loan? To lose my job? Do you think I'm foolish?" Her words cut deeper than she intended. Amara stood still, clutching the small silver necklace their late mother left her last reminder of innocence. Sophie might die if we do nothing, she said in a trembling voice. Clara didn't answer. She only looked away, ashamed and afraid. That night, as the rain began to fall over Cedarlight, Amara sat beside Sophie's bed, watching her chest rise and fall weakly. The lightning flickered across her sister's pale face, and Amara whispered, I won't lose you, even if I must lose myself. She opened an old metal box and found one of Clara's old city dresses, a fitted red gown from her office years ago. It smelled of perfume and ambition. Amara touched it hesitantly, tears filling her eyes. When dawn broke, she knelt beside Sophie and kissed her forehead. Forgive me, she whispered. I'll bring the money home. Outside, the village stirred awake. The red soil was damp, the air heavy with hope and despair. Amara, wearing her sister's city dress and her mother's necklace, began the long walk toward Lekora City, toward a destiny that would change everything. The city lights of Lekora glimmered like jewels as Amara Bennett stepped off the village bus. Her red dress clung awkwardly to her modest frame, her hands trembling as she held her small purse. She had never been to this part of the city before, where music throbbed from luxury cars, and perfume lingered heavier than prayers. The rain from the afternoon had turned the streets slick, reflecting the neon glow of signs and headlights. Amara stood at a junction under a flickering lamppost, staring at her reflection in a puddle, a face too innocent for the world she was about to enter. Her heart whispered, Go home? But her mind replied, Sophie needs you. As the clock struck 9, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz slowed beside her. The tinted window rolled down, and a man's voice, smooth, composed, asked, How much for a night? Amara froze. She didn't know what to say. The question stung like a slap. Answer me, the man urged softly, mistaking her silence for shyness. It was Ethan Cole, the wealthy CEO from Marina View Towers, the man whose loneliness had driven him out that night in search of a face to forget his own emptiness. Amara swallowed hard. 50,000, she said, her voice barely audible. The words burned her tongue, each syllable heavier than guilt. Ethan nodded slightly, gesturing for her to get in. The car smelled of leather and luxury, a world far removed from her own. Ethan's eyes flicked toward her legs, but her face told another story. Fear, not desire. You're nervous, he said almost kindly. First time? She nodded faintly. I just need the money. At Hillcrest Grand Hotel, Ethan handed his keys to the valet and walked her inside. The lobby gleamed with chandeliers. Her reflection looked out of place in the mirrors. Inside the room, Ethan poured 2 glasses of wine. It'll help you relax, he said. I don't drink, Amara whispered. But his charm pressed against her will. He laughed lightly. Just a sip. She obeyed, then another, and another, until the room began to blur. As she sat on the bed, tears pooled at the corners of her eyes. Please, she murmured, I'm not like the others. I just need money for my sister's medicine. Ethan froze. He'd heard lines like that before. Every girl has a story, he thought bitterly. When he reached to touch her, she flinched, whispering, I'm a virgin. He hesitated just for a second, but pride and habit overruled compassion. Later that night, as the city hummed below, Amara's cries faded into the rain outside. And for the first time, Ethan Cole, the man who thought he could buy anything, took something he could never return. In the silence that followed, The silver necklace slipped from Amara's neck and fell to the floor, unnoticed, shining faintly beneath the lamplight. Morning crept slowly into Hillcrest Grand Hotel, its light slipping past the velvet curtains and spilling across the tangled sheets. Ethan Cole stirred, his mind fogged with the dull ache of another meaningless night. He reached out lazily to the other side of the bed, but it was empty. At first he thought she had gone to the bathroom, but when his eyes caught the crimson stains on the white sheets, his heart froze. Blood. It wasn't much, but it was enough to tell the truth he'd ignored the night before. He sat up sharply, eyes darting around the room, the scattered dress, the untouched wine glass, and on the nightstand a small silver necklace, its delicate pendant catching the morning light. A voice echoed in his memory, trembling, desperate. "I'm not a prostitute. I just need the money for my sister's medicine." Ethan's breath caught. "God," he whispered, staring at the sheets. She was telling the truth. For the first time in years, guilt crawled into his soul, like cold water into cracks. His chest tightened as realization struck he had taken something pure, something sacred, from a girl who hadn't even belonged in that world. He dressed hurriedly, clutching the necklace as if it were a confession he couldn't hide. In the mirror, his reflection looked unfamiliar. The confident man who once prided himself on control was gone. In his place stood a stranger, haunted and ashamed. Outside the hotel, the city buzzed indifferently. Cars honked, people hurried, the world went on, but Ethan couldn't. He drove through Lekora's busy streets, searching for her face among the crowd. He stopped at every corner, asked every girl standing by the roadside, but none of them knew her. He returned to Marina View Towers, sat on the edge of his bed and stared at the necklace again. Its pendant shimmered faintly, a piece of silver, yet heavy as sin. In his solitude, he whispered, "What have I done?" The rain began to fall again that evening, tapping softly against the glass. For once, Ethan didn't feel powerful. He felt human, painfully human. The money, the cars, the business deals, none of it silenced the voice inside him that kept repeating, "You hurt someone who only wanted to save a life." And somewhere across the city, Amara Bennett walked barefoot along the narrow lane to Cedarlight Village, clutching her purse tightly, filled with the money that carried both salvation and shame. Every step she took left a mark in the wet red soil, like the memory of a night that would follow them both for the rest of their lives. The rain had stopped, but Cedarlight Village still carried the scent of wet dust and sorrow. When Amara Bennett returned home at dawn, her red dress was wrinkled, her eyes hollow, and her steps unsteady. She said nothing. She only placed a small envelope on the table beside Sophie's medicine bottles. Her elder sister Clara stared at it in disbelief. "Where did you get this?" she asked, picking up the envelope. It was filled with crisp N1, 000 notes, far too much for someone who left home empty-handed. Amara's lips trembled. "Don't ask me, please. Just buy drugs. Save Sophie." Clara narrowed her eyes. "So you finally found a man." The words struck like stones. Amara flinched but didn't reply. She turned toward the small bathroom, her body aching with shame. Behind her, Clara smirked bitterly. "You'll get used to it if you keep doing it," she said coldly. From inside the bathroom, Amara's quiet sobs echoed through the thin walls. She washed herself again and again, but guilt clung to her like a shadow. By evening, St. Flora Hospital called to say Sophie's deposit had been made. The surgery would begin in a few days. Amara felt relief, but it came mixed with a grief that words couldn't hold. Meanwhile, across Lekora City, Ethan Cole couldn't focus on his work. The necklace lay on his office desk, gleaming like an accusation. His secretary noticed the change. His usual confidence had turned into quiet distraction. "Sir?" she asked gently. "Are you all right?" He nodded absently. "Just tired." But his nights were sleepless. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, the tears, the trembling hands, the voice that pleaded for mercy. Then one evening, while sitting with his friend Leo Adewale, Leo scrolled through his phone and said, "Bro, you've been gloomy lately. Look at this, a fine girl from Lekora Records office. Maybe she'll cheer you up." He turned the phone toward Ethan. On the screen was Amara Bennett's profile picture, polished, poised, and strikingly similar to Amara. Ethan's heart leapt. "Send me that," he said quickly. Later that night, he found the same photo online, her number listed on her business profile. Hope sparked inside him. Maybe he could finally make things right. Maybe she'd forgive him. He dialed the number with trembling hands. "Hello?" came Clara's voice. "Amara, it's me. I'm so sorry about what happened that night." For a brief moment, Clara froze. He thinks I'm her, she realized. Then greed flickered behind her eyes. Yes, she stammered softly. "It's all right. I understand." Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him. "I've been searching for you. I still have your necklace. Please meet me tomorrow. Let me make things right." Clara smiled, slowly, already seeing opportunity where her sister had found pain. "All right," she said sweetly. "Tomorrow." And as she hung up, she whispered to herself, "If Amara won't change our lives, I will." Weeks turned into months, but the past clung to Ethan Cole like perfume that wouldn't fade. He kept the silver necklace locked in his drawer, yet every time he opened it, the guilt came rushing back. He had tried to make peace through his so-called reunion with Amara Bennett, believing her to be the woman from that night, the one he had wronged. Their first meeting at Lekora Mall had been emotional for him, but opportunistic for her. Ethan had arrived with remorse in his eyes and a check in his hand. "I can't undo the pain I caused," he said softly, placing the necklace in Clara's palm. "But please, use this to start over." Clara smiled demurely, though her mind raced with calculation. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling, perfectly rehearsed. She tucked the necklace into her purse and walked away, already dreaming of a new life. Within a week, she resigned from her clerk job and rented a mini flat in Hillview Quarters, telling her neighbors she had a silent investor. She opened a boutique and began living the life she always envied, one her sister's tears had paid for. But across the city, in a crowded corner of Cedarlight, the real Amara Bennett was barely surviving. Sophie's surgery had been successful, but the bills that followed left them destitute again. Clara's absence only deepened the hardship. One morning, Amara overheard two women in the market discussing cleaner jobs at Crown Link headquarters, Ethan's company. She didn't know it belonged to him. All she heard was steady pay, respectful boss, and lunch provided. With a fragile heart and borrowed clothes, Amara applied. The HR assistant barely looked up before saying, "Report tomorrow morning. You're hired." The next day, she stood in the gleaming lobby of Crown Link, marble floors, glass walls, and the smell of expensive coffee. She clutched her mop like it was a shield. That same morning, Ethan arrived earlier than usual. His mind was restless. Clara's laughter and charm no longer brought peace. There was something off, something missing. When he stepped into his office, he frowned. Why is this desk still dusty? Call the new cleaner. Amara entered quietly, head bowed. She placed her bucket by the door and walked toward the desk, but as she bent to pick up a file that had fallen, Ethan turned around, and in that frozen heartbeat, time stood still. Their eyes met. Recognition flared, hers filled with dread, his with disbelief. "Wait!" Ethan whispered, voice shaking. "It's you." Amara's mop clattered to the floor. She turned to run, but he caught her wrist gently. "Please," he said, his tone no longer commanding but pleading. "Don't go." Her eyes glistened. "I don't belong here, sir. I'm just a cleaner." Ethan's voice broke. "No, you're the reason I've been trying to become a better man." For a moment, silence wrapped around them. Two souls bound by a night neither could forget. And as the city of Lekora buzzed outside, inside Crown Link's glass walls, guilt finally met its truth face to face. For a long moment, the air inside Crown Link headquarters felt still, like time itself held its breath. Ethan Cole stood frozen, the weight of recognition sinking into his chest. Across from him, Amara Bennett trembled, her eyes darting between the polished floor and his disbelieving face. "Amara." Ethan whispered her name as if it were a prayer finally remembered. You're the girl from that night, aren't you?" She stiffened, her throat tightening. "Please, sir, I don't want trouble," she said, stepping back. "I just came to work. I've moved on." But Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, I ruined your life. I owe you everything." Her hands clenched around the edge of her cleaning cloth, her voice cracking. "You can't give me back what I lost." Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I did what I had to do for my sister. That's all." For the first time since that night, Ethan saw her not as a symbol of guilt, but as a human being fragile, brave, and undeserving of what he had done. He wanted to speak, but the intercom buzzed. His secretary's voice broke the tension. "Sir, Miss Clara Bennett is on the line. She says it's urgent." Amara's breath caught. "Clara?" she whispered, her sister's name trembling off her lips. Ethan froze. "Clara Bennett?" He turned slowly to Amara. "Wait, you have a sister named Clara?" "Yes," Amara replied cautiously. "Why?" The truth dawned on him like thunder cracking the sky. His hand shook as he reached for his phone. On the screen glowed Clara's name, the woman he'd been sending money to, the woman wearing Amara's necklace. He turned back to Amara, voice barely audible. She told me she was you." Amara's eyes widened. The silence between them deepened until tears began rolling down her cheeks. "She took the money," she whispered. "The necklace too?" Ethan nodded slowly, guilt deepening in his face. "I was blind. I just wanted to make things right. I didn't know I was helping the wrong person." Amara covered her mouth, trying to contain the sob that escaped her. The pain wasn't just from betrayal. It was the cruel reminder that even her own blood could profit from her suffering. Ethan stepped closer, his voice trembling. "Let me fix this. Please, let me help you this time, not out of guilt, but because I care." Amara shook her head. "You don't owe me anything." But he didn't let her finish. "Yes, I do," he said firmly. "You saved your sister's life, and in the process you saved mine. You made me face who I had become." She stared at him, unsure whether to believe the sincerity in his voice. For the first time, his eyes held no arrogance, only remorse. That night when she returned home, she found her belongings scattered outside. The landlord stood in the rain, arms crossed. 5 months' rent, no payment, I'm done waiting. She sat by the roadside, shivering in the drizzle, clutching a torn bag of clothes. Moments later, headlights swept across her face. Ethan's car stopped beside her. He stepped out holding an umbrella. "Come," he said gently. "You can't stay here." Amara hesitated, her pride fighting her need, but when the rain grew colder, she nodded silently. And as he helped her into the car, something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness yet, but the beginning of it. Inside the quiet hum of the car, Ethan whispered to himself, "Maybe God brought me back to the same place, not to repeat my sin, but to heal it." The storm that night washed Lekora City clean, but inside West Pine Estate, tension was quietly gathering like clouds refusing to leave. For the first time in years, Amara Bennett slept in a real bed, soft sheets, clean air, and safety, yet she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered the past, the hotel room, the shame, her sister's betrayal. In the guest room next door, Ethan Cole sat awake too, staring at the same silver necklace now resting on the table between them. He'd promised himself this time he would do things right, no hidden motives, no guilt-driven gestures. He wanted to restore what he had broken, even if Amara never loved or forgave him. By morning, he had already called his lawyer, Barrister Desmond Cole, asking him to arrange a modest apartment and employment for Amara. "She deserves to start fresh," Ethan said. "No charity, just opportunity." But fate had other plans. Across town, Clara Bennett was beginning to lose everything. Her boutique's rent was overdue. Her investor money was almost gone. And her conscience, what little remained, kept her restless. Ethan hadn't called in weeks. He no longer sent money, no longer checked on her. When her calls went unanswered, she decided to go to Crown Link headquarters, determined to remind him who had saved his conscience. But when she arrived, the secretary said casually, "Mr. Cole isn't in. He's spending the week at his West Pine residence." Clara's heart skipped. West Pine Estate was no small address. Only the wealthy lived there. A thought crossed her mind like a spark in dry grass. He must have replaced me. By late afternoon, she was standing at Ethan's gate, her heart pounding. The guard hesitated, but she pushed through. Inside, the house was warm, filled with the aroma of food. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she entered the sitting room, and then she froze. There, setting a tray on the table, was Amara. The shock on Amara's face mirrored hers. "Clara," she whispered, trembling. "What are you doing here?" Clara's voice rose, sharp and bitter. You live here now?" Ethan walked in at that moment, startled by the confrontation. "Clara, what are you doing here?" Clara's eyes flamed. "So it's true. You threw me away for her, my own sister." She turned on Amara. "You think you can steal my man, my life?" Amara shook her head, tears welling. "I didn't steal anything, Clara. You lied to him. You used my pain to get what you wanted." "Lied?" Clara scoffed. "I only took what you were too weak to keep. You always act innocent, but you love playing the victim." Ethan stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Enough. Clara, you deceived me. You took the money meant for her. You've hurt your own blood." For a moment, Clara's confidence cracked. "You can't prove anything." Ethan walked to his drawer, took out a document, and dropped it on the table. The CCTV footage from Crown Link, you entered my office pretending to be her. I know everything now. Clara's face paled. Get out, Ethan said quietly, before I make this official. She looked between them, her eyes brimming with fury and humiliation. You'll regret this, she hissed. Both of you. As the door slammed behind her, Amara sank onto the couch, shaken. She's still my sister? She whispered. Ethan knelt before her, his voice soft. And you're still the only one who ever made me want to be better. Outside, Clara's tears mixed with rain as she stormed down the driveway, but in her heart, a darker storm was forming, one of jealousy, desperation, and revenge. She wasn't done yet. The following week, the peace inside West Pine Estate felt fragile like a candle flickering in the wind. Amara Bennett had begun settling into a quiet rhythm. She helped around the house, took walks through the garden, and slowly allowed laughter to return to her lips. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a burden, but as a person. Ethan Cole, though still burdened with guilt, had found new purpose. Each day he made time to talk to her, not about work, not about the past, but about life, faith, and dreams. You said once that you wanted to design children's clothes, he reminded her one evening. I'll help you start that line if you'll let me. Her eyes softened, but she shook her head. You've done enough. I don't want my new life to grow from pity. He smiled faintly, then let it grow from gratitude. You don't owe me forgiveness, I owe you a future. For a moment, their gazes held, the air charged with something unspoken yet gentle. It wasn't romance yet, but it was healing. But far away, Clara Bennett was plotting again. She couldn't bear the idea of Amara being loved by the man she'd deceived. Her pride had been wounded beyond repair, and jealousy had turned into obsession. Clara visited their extended relatives in Cedarlight Village, uncles, aunts, and cousins who had barely spoken to them since their parents' funeral. She arrived with fake tears and carefully woven lies. Amara is living in a man's house in Lekora, she said bitterly. He's rich, older, and unmarried. The neighbors talk. She's bringing shame to our family name. Her words stirred the greedy hearts of the elders. A rich man, you say? One uncle murmured. Yes, Clara sniffed. He's keeping her, refusing to let her come home. But maybe if you all visit him, he'll offer compensation or even marry her properly. The next day, a convoy of dusty village taxis rolled into West Pine Estate. The guards were confused until Amara herself came running out, shocked to see her uncles, aunts, and Clara standing at the gate. Uncle Lekora, she gasped. Auntie Rose, what are you all doing here? Clara stepped forward, pretending to be concerned. We came to save you, sister. You can't keep living with a man who isn't your husband. It's against our custom. Ethan, hearing the commotion, came outside. The elders turned to him, their eyes scanning his expensive suit, his car, his house, and suddenly their anger melted into calculation. Good afternoon, sir, Uncle Lekora said respectfully. We only came to ensure our daughter's honor is protected, you understand? In our culture, a woman cannot stay with a man unless... Ethan raised a brow. Unless what? Unless he intends to marry her, Auntie Rose finished, smiling thinly. Clara's jaw tightened. This wasn't the plan. Ethan looked at Amara, then back at the family. His voice was calm, steady, but sincere. Then you have nothing to worry about. I intend to marry her. The yard fell silent. Amara's eyes widened. Ethan, he continued, unwavering, not to repair my guilt, not to please anyone, but because she's the only woman who's ever made me feel alive. The relatives erupted in excitement. They began praising him, shaking hands, blessing the match. Only Clara stood apart, frozen with disbelief. When she found her voice, it came out as a hiss. You can't be serious. She's nothing without you. She doesn't even want... Enough, Clara, Ethan said firmly. You've done enough harm. He turned to the elders. I'll come to Cedarlight in 3 days for the marriage list. She deserves to be honored. The uncles nodded eagerly, already calculating their gain. Clara's nails dug into her palm, her smile cracking like glass. As the cars drove away with laughter and chatter, Amara turned to Ethan, her heart pounding. Why did you say that? You didn't even ask me. Because I meant it, he said quietly. But if you say no, I'll walk away and never ask again. She looked away, torn between gratitude, confusion, and fear. For the first time, love frightened her more than pain ever had. And in the shadows of the departing convoy, Clara Bennett sat in silence, rage burning behind her eyes. She had lost his money, his trust, and now his heart. But she whispered to herself, if I can't have peace, neither will she. The morning after the visit from Amara's relatives, sunlight filtered through the curtains of West Pine Estate, but peace refused to return. Amara Bennett sat by the balcony, gazing at the garden below her heart, tangled between gratitude and fear. Ethan's declaration of marriage echoed in her mind, like a song she didn't know how to sing along to. He had been sincere. She could feel it. But could love truly grow from guilt? Could light be born from the ruins of a night that still haunted her dreams? As she sat lost in thought, her phone vibrated an unfamiliar number. Hello? She answered softly. A familiar voice replied, sharp as a knife wrapped in honey. So, you're engaged now? Her breath caught. Clara? Clara laughed cold, measured. You always take what's mine, don't you? But this time you should know who you're marrying. Clara, please. He's sick, Amara, Clara interrupted, her tone dripping with malice. Ethan Cole is hiding something. He has HIV. That's why he stopped calling me. That's why he's rushing to marry you to trap you before you find out. The phone slipped from Amara's hand. That's a lie, she whispered, trembling. Is it? Clara sneered. Ask him why he's always buying medicine. Ask him about the calls he makes to the pharmacy at night. The line went dead. Amara sat frozen, her body cold despite the warm air. Her mind raced, her faith shook. Could it be true? She remembered the late-night phone calls, the bottles she'd once seen on his desk labeled in Latin medical terms. Every small moment began twisting into suspicion. That evening, Ethan returned home early, smiling as he held a brown package. Good news, he said warmly. My uncle's medicine finally arrived. He'll be well enough to join us for the marriage visit. But to Amara's ears, the word medicine echoed differently now. Dark, heavy, accusing. She forced a smile, her voice barely steady. That's good to hear. Ethan noticed her distant tone. Amara, are you okay? I'm fine, she lied, avoiding his gaze. That night, while Ethan worked in his study, she tiptoed past the door and overheard his voice. Yes, please deliver it tomorrow morning, he said over the phone. The medicine is urgent. I can't delay another day. Her heart sank. Clara's lie now sounded like truth. She turned away, tears spilling down her cheeks. Hours later, Ethan entered her room to say goodnight, only to find her sitting on the edge of the bed, her bags half packed. Amara, what's this? She looked up, her face pale. Tell me the truth, Ethan, she whispered. Are you sick? He blinked, confused. Sick? What do you mean? Don't lie to me, she cried, her voice breaking. I heard you. I've seen the medicines. Clara told me. He stepped forward, his voice rising. Clara, you believed her? I had to. Amara's tears fell freely now. You never told me anything. You never said who the medicine was for. Ethan exhaled slowly, his jaw tight with frustration. It's for my uncle Amara. He's bedridden in the village. I only said I was the patient so the pharmacist would hurry. She stared at him, speechless. Part of her wanted to believe. But Clara's poison had already taken root. Ethan's voice softened. You don't trust me? Her silence was answer enough. He turned away, his voice quiet but heavy. I thought love was growing here. I was wrong. You can go if you believe her lies. Amara's tears blurred her vision. I never wanted this pain again, she whispered, clutching her bag. As she left the room, lightning flashed across the window, a sign that another storm was coming, one that would test everything they had built. And miles away, Clara Bennett watched the thunder from her window, smiling faintly. Let her run, she murmured. When he's alone again, I'll return. Night fell heavy over Lekora City, its thunder rolling like a warning from the heavens. Inside West Pine Estate, silence lingered, where warmth once lived. Amara Bennett stood by the door, her suitcase trembling in her hand, her heart aching with confusion and fear. Behind her, Ethan Cole's voice broke through the quiet, deep, tired, wounded. Where are you going, Amara? She froze. She hadn't heard him come down the stairs. He stood there, no anger, just heartbreak in his eye. Please, she said softly, her voice cracking. I can't stay. You've lied to me. You've hidden things. I can't live not knowing what's true anymore. He stepped closer, the storm's lightning flashing across his face. What lies? He asked. Tell me. Amara's lips trembled. You're sick, Ethan. You have HIV. Clara told me everything. I even heard you begging the pharmacy for medicine last night. For a moment, his expression was unreadable. Then, to her surprise, he laughed, not out of mockery, but disbelief. Medicine, he said quietly. Yes, I did call the pharmacy, but not for me, Amara. My uncle has been ill for months. The man who raised me, he's too weak to speak for himself. I lied to get his medicine delivered faster. Amara blinked, her breath catching. Your uncle? Yes. His tone softened now. You believed Clara without asking me once? Tears filled her eyes. I didn't want to, but she sounded so sure, and I was scared. Ethan's voice trembled. I told myself I'd never hurt you again. I gave you a home, peace, and my truth, yet you let her break it all. Amara took a step closer. Ethan, please, I didn't mean to doubt you. He turned away sharply. No, Amara. You trusted the person who betrayed you before. That's what hurts most. The words sliced through her like glass. She dropped her bag, her knees giving way as tears fell freely. You're right, she whispered. I failed you. I failed myself. Ethan's shoulders tensed. For a moment, he looked as if he would walk away, but instead he exhaled and whispered, Then why are you still here? Amara lifted her face slowly, the rain outside casting silver streaks across the window. Because I love you, she said simply. I didn't know when it happened, but it did. You showed me kindness when I only knew pain. You made me believe in new beginnings again. and I ruined it with fear." Her words cracked open something in him. Ethan turned, his eyes wet though he tried to hide it. He knelt beside her and gently lifted her chin. "I've made terrible mistakes too," he said softly, "but loving you wasn't one of them." He pulled her into his arms. For the first time since their broken beginning, they held each other not out of guilt or loneliness, but forgiveness. The storm outside began to fade, as if even the heavens knew their hearts had found rest. Hours later, Ethan drove Amara to Cedarlight Village to visit her family and his uncle. There, in the soft dawn light, their future began to take shape. 3 days later, the village square glowed with music and joy as their traditional marriage was held under the tall palms. Sophie, now healthy, danced in laughter. The elders blessed the union. Even Clara, standing at the edge of the crowd, watched silently, her expression unreadable. When Ethan turned to place the silver necklace back around Amara's neck, his voice was steady. "I took this from you in darkness. Today I return it in light." Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "And I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because love deserves peace." They stood beneath the sunrise, two souls once broken by guilt, now rebuilt by grace. And as the wind carried laughter across Cedarlight, one truth lingered gently in the air. Love is not born perfect, it is redeemed.